Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Leadership Unveiled. My name is Kayla Fahey-Ahrndt. I'm your host, and today is day 4 of the 12 Days of Leadership. I'm pumped because today we're going to be talking about the 4 major pitfalls, mindset pitfalls that leaders have that lead to burnout. That's a place none of us want to be, but sometimes we find ourselves there, and man, it's hard to get out. So I'm going to try to help you avoid that in this talk, so stay tuned for all 4 lessons. But before we get started, again, I just want to say thank you and welcome. If you're new here and this is your first time, I'm so happy you've joined us. If you missed any of the first 3 talks, no worries. On YouTube, if you're listening here on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you subscribe and like if you haven't already. I have a goal to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, or at least in January. But hey, we're gonna push for it, right? So if you are listening here on YouTube, there is a playlist called the 12 Days of Leadership. Just go over there, check it out, and all of the episodes are linked. If you are listening on a podcast app, you can get those episodes if you just scroll up and look at the previous episodes. They are all going to be right there, as well as I will link to my website in the show notes so that you can also find them on my website. So let's get started for today's talk. All right, I made a list on my phone. So something that I like to do is whenever I have ideas for leadership talks or podcast episodes, I just make a note on my phone. And so I have this whole list called Burnout Talk. I did a talk last year it was this year in April, I think, at the Wisconsin ASCLS meeting, which is American Society for Clinical Laboratory Sciences. And I gave a talk on how to avoid burnout in the lab. And I'll have to admit, in that talk, I tried to give every single tip I've ever learned in my whole life because it was one of the first talks I had given on burnout. But there's just too much to give in only one talk. So I imagine this theme will come up for us more and more as the podcast goes on. So today I picked 4 of the bullet points out of here, in honor of day 4 of the leadership, the 12 Days of Leadership, and it being day 4, of course. So the first one is coping with cynicism, sarcasm, and venting. This is one of the number 1 pitfalls I find that leaders and professionals have, which spirals and leads to burnout. So there's nothing wrong with venting. We all do it. We all need to just let off some steam here and there. And sometimes we just need the people that we're venting to know. We have to communicate with them that we're not really looking for them to solve problems. We're just looking for them to listen and just affirm our feelings, right? Most of the time, I feel like that's what we're looking for. But when it gets cynical, or you cope with sarcasm and rude comments, or those comments are in your mind, or you just vent all day long. Maybe you have a text chain with other coworkers and it's all just only sharing the negative stuff that happens at work. I think that gets toxic super, super quick. I have experienced that and even fallen trapped to it, and it doesn't feel good. Every time you go to share something, it just feels really, really icky. And the thing with the text chains or the venting to people who are also venting to you is that it just amplifies what's actually happening. So you might start off by sharing oh, here's this thing that happened, it sucked, blah, blah, blah. And then the person will empathize with you and say yeah, me too, this and this. And then all of a sudden, it's all of these things build on each other, and maybe somebody else's experience is now your experience, and maybe you didn't actually ever have that as a problem. So now it's just you have 2 times the problems. So you see what I'm saying? I just feel like it amplifies things. So instead of hoping with cynicism or sarcasm or venting, try to think whenever you go to text or to share that, is this going to help me move forward? And if it's not, and it's just going to keep the thing that is bothering you alive, then maybe reconsider. And so I'm not saying never vent again, but what I am saying is just be really careful about that, because when we have feelings and thoughts, those become our words. Those words turn into our actions and behaviors become our habits. And so before you know it, the things that we think about, that we're constantly thinking about, saying, become habits. And that's when you get that spiral where now you're burnt out, because all you're thinking about are all of the negative things. All right, let's move on to the second biggest pitfall that I see with leaders and professionals is forgetting that most things take more than a day or a few weeks to fix. It can even take a while, years. It can even take years to fix certain problems. So that doesn't mean give up. It just means pace yourself. So it's kind of this all or nothing mentality. So sometimes I'll see leaders or professionals be like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And so I might as well just like just try not to even fix the problem, or just like lean into the thing that makes the problem worse, or feeling like helpless when they've tried to solve the problem and then the next day it's not better. So we really need to remember when we're having a tough time that these things take longer than a day. So that means pace yourself. So I want to give you a framework around pace, and it's actually a mnemonic, PACE. So when you're feeling like there's a thing that's big, it's a big problem, you are trying to change it, you want to make things better, but you know that it needs to take a while, use this acronym PACE. So the number one thing I like to do in this situation is for people. Humanize yourself with your team. Humanize your team members to yourself. So I think it can be really easy when we're struggling, trying to solve problems, nothing's going our way, to just like blame and shame everyone, including ourselves. And we all have to remember that the people we work for, the people we work with, and ourselves, we're all humans, right? And so we need to focus. If we lean in on and focus on our people, like I feel like life is so much easier. If your people trust you, you can do great things even in really, really tough times. If they don't trust you, it's going to be really, really hard. So humanize yourself. Help people know who you are. Make sure they know what your interest is and that you have their best interest in mind when you're making decisions. So just focus on the people. Even finding gratitude to people, even making small talk that's not even small talk, but talk about their families and their friends and their activities and their hobbies. Just get to know other people. It just makes work more fun. All right, the second letter in PACE is A. So A is for allow space. So give yourself space to think about things, to allow time to help you to let go of whatever you're holding on to and realizing that thing's going to take longer. You might even need to allow yourself space to grieve. Maybe you had an idea of what something was going to be, it changed, and now you're grieving that thing that you lost, or maybe a structure that was, or a thing that has been. Give yourself time to come to being okay with whatever it is, whatever new pace or whatever thing you're going to have to do. So that's A. PACE, the next letter is C, for consistency/care. So this is taking little actions consistently every day to move forward to that goal, to whatever you're trying to change or achieve. But also the care part is taking care of yourself along the way. I often see leaders who think they can't step away for a few days because their team will need them so much. And in fact, you need to help your team learn how to survive without you. And hint, hint, they probably can already do that. So if you are burnt out and need to take some rest, maybe you need some sleep, do that. Maybe you need to take a few days for education or personal professional development, do that. Maybe you need to take time to schedule a conference room to figure out what your leader standard work is going to be, which is going to help you determine how am I going to show up daily, weekly, and monthly consistently. Do that. That's going to set the foundation for whatever marathon you're running, not a sprint, so that you can consistently keep showing up and pace yourself. And the E in PACE stands for every day is a new day. So every day is a chance to show up better. And if you think about it like this, everything is learning. And I've also heard this from Kim Fitzpatrick, somebody I met online. She is an entrepreneur and has multiple businesses, and she says everything is data. She has it tattooed on herself. Everything is data. So every day is a new day, a new opportunity to show up a little bit better, to learn a little bit more, and start over. All right, so don't fall to the pitfall of forgetting that most things take more than a day to fix. Pace yourself by humanizing yourself and your people, allowing space for thinking, grieving, letting go, coming to terms with the thing. Create consistency and care for yourself by taking action, as well as doing what you need to do to have self-care and compassion, as well as E, every day is a new day and a chance to show up better. All right, the third pitfall that I often see leaders and professionals falling into is spiraling and constant thoughts about things they cannot control instead of focusing on what they can. This one sort of circles back to the first one, which is like the constant coping with cynicism, sarcasm, or venting. Except for this can really be more in the mind. So instead of like the outward complaining and blaming, this is often the internal, like constantly thinking about things they can't control. For example, like let's just say your pay model is changing at work. Well, what can I do about that? Probably not much, right? But I can continue to show up in the best version of myself, continue to give everything that I can offer, keep showing up in my best way, and write clear goals, meet and work towards meeting those goals, have open conversations with my leader so that I get the best promotion I can. That's what you can control, right? But instead, spiraling and thinking about things you can't control. And what happens then is either, I feel like it goes two ways. You can either become really like disillusioned and detached from the organization or your work, sort of like I resent my work. Everything is horrible. I'm helpless and hopeless. There's nothing I can do. And then the other end would be kind of getting very angry, getting very upset, blaming, pointing fingers at other people, instead of turning around and looking like, what could I do? What could my contribution be? So I think this kind of, if you think of the PACE model, the like the C or the A, allowing space to think about, okay, what can I control? What can't I control? And it doesn't mean that you're just like letting go of all of it. It just means that, okay, I don't want to spend mental energy spiraling on something that I literally have no power over, because that's giving it power over me. So instead, I'm going to focus on what I can control and take action consistently, learn and show up every day a little bit better than the next day. All right, the last and final reason or most common pitfall that I find leaders heading into is resorting to try to control everything when things are not going well. This is often the time to surrender a bit or challenge yourself instead of trying to control things. Think of, what else could I do? So this is something that I've experienced myself even rather recently, is like when things aren't going well for you or something's not going your way, often there's like a fear of like total failure or something catastrophic. So instead of laying all your chips out, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to control all of it. And you just like scoop everything in. You're like, give me, right? Like, how can I control this? So if you ever find yourself kind of feeling like, okay, I need to take care of this, I need to fix this, that is a sign to you that, okay, actually this might be a chance for expansion. Instead of scarcity and being like, I need to fix this, I need to be the hero, I need to be the one to fix this. Opening up a little bit and reflecting, again, allowing space for thinking and saying, okay, well, what's a better way? What else could I do instead of controlling this very tightly? Could I allow other people to come in and help me in this situation? What other information might I need to better learn about this situation, so that instead of feeling like I have to control everything, that I can learn and ask better questions to allow more people in to help me solve the problem, right? So I'll just give an example. I had somebody who was kind of stepping away from their role, and we had some not so great feedback, but it was valid. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, like I need to fix this. And so I was like, okay, everyone needs to report directly to me. I'll have one-on-ones with like 20 people, right? I'm exaggerating, but that was like my gut reaction, because I was like, oh my gosh, this can't happen again. I have to fix it. And then I was like, okay, never mind. That's not realistic. Like, what else could I do? And so the solution was to create a different venue for communication. That communication doesn't have to come directly from me. It can come like in a matrixed way or a cross-functional way. I don't have to control everything so tightly, right? But that was a gut reaction I felt from a visceral feeling I had from some feedback that we had gotten. So we all fall to these pitfalls, but it's just a matter of, can you recognize when you're finding some of these in yourself? And can you just tweak your mindset a little bit to be like, okay, wait a minute, I'm spiraling. I'm being very sarcastic. I'm venting. This feels icky. I need to think about whether or not I want to continue this. I need to set boundaries or tell my coworkers, hey, I'm just venting. I really have enjoyed doing this with you guys, but it's really, it's not serving me anymore. And I gotta stop for my own mental health, right? Forgetting that things take time, especially as new professionals, we want to solve things quickly, and just the more experience I get, the more I realize like things just take time and to solve, and they will resolve. 3, spiraling in constant thoughts about things you can't control. When you feel like all you're saying is there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do, let that be a sign to say, wait a minute, actually, what else could I do? How else could I look at this problem? And number 4, when you find yourself trying to tightly control things, that's actually a sign that you need to open up a little bit to look at it in a different way or to ask for help, right? All right, everybody, I hope these 4 tips will help you, catch yourself in the moment so then you can avoid burnout, because I feel like the more we have these types of mindsets, the more prone we are to spiraling into a very negative space and a resentful space from our work. And I always say this, it's so much harder to climb out of a hole than to prevent yourself from falling in, right? And so sometimes we will fall in a hole and then inevitably we will have to crawl out, right? But if we can avoid falling in, I think that we are so much better off. So if you like this video or this podcast episode, please subscribe, leave a rating or review if you're on the podcast app, so this goes out to other people and I know that you enjoyed the episode. And again, if you haven't watched the other episodes, just go back to the playlist on YouTube or scroll back in your podcast app or visit my website, which is linked in the show notes. And again, I'll be here for the next few days. So I will see you tomorrow for day 5 of the 12 Days of Leadership. All right, everybody, take care.